Welcome to the Faith is Not Blind podcast. I'm Sarah Devonier, and I'm here with Janae. And I'm really happy to have her here. I'm wondering if you could start off by talking about sort of the beginnings of your testimony and how it related to your family life and your childhood.
Yeah, so way back.
Yeah,
I mean,
all those many years ago.
Decades.
Yes.
I'm 26. So.
Yeah. So 20 years ago.
Yeah, so I grew up in a home. I'm the youngest of 5, and there's a 5-year gap between the brother that's just older than me.
Yeah.
So I was kind of I felt like just a little squirrel that was running around.
but not spoiled.
But of course not, never. And both of my parents grew up in families that had been members since the Restoration,
Right.
right. Across the plains, pioneer stock, whatever.
Yeah.
So it was just a thing, like everybody. We were just members of the church, and it was great. And I feel like it was pretty easy for me to just grab onto everything that was taught. And it was easy for me to go to church. I'm extremely extroverted, and I love people. So being with people for 3 hours and being president of the Beehives, whatever, was no problem for me. So I always enjoyed church a lot. My parents were really, they tried really hard to get us to love the church. They weren't really strict about it, but it was.
So they let it be your choice.
Yeah. I don't ever remember. I mean, like I said, it was always easy for me to want to go to church, but I remember like my brother kind of had when he was a teenager, didn't really want to go, and we just I don't know. I could be remembering wrong though. I was a little bit younger, like I said. I don't remember ever, dragging him to church or anything like that. And my sister had a job in high school that would be working on Sundays, and it happened. So I don't know.
So it wasn't an absolute binary where you were worried if he wasn't going to church necessarily.
Well, I don't know. I feel like they definitely worried.
Yeah. But they still let him make his own choices.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's hard because for me it was they never had to deal with that because I was like, sure, I'll be ready to go.
Yeah.
There's boys at church. There's usually cookies if
Yeah.
So I enjoyed it, but I did have a fundamental belief. I knew Heavenly Father was my Father. I loved all the teachings and everything, and so it was just I grew up pretty. Yeah. It was just a pretty easy experience for me growing up.
So you ended up serving a mission.
I did.
And what led you to that? What were the motivating factors behind deciding to serve a mission?
Okay, well that's after kind of a big transition in faith that I had.
Well, go ahead and talk about that first.
Okay, because that's kind of okay. So so right before I started college up at BYU, Idaho, I was with my sister, and my sister, she was very straight arrow growing up, got her personal progress when she was probably 12 and a half, I don't know. Yeah. But just very straight arrow, president of the seminary class, pretty rigid, definitely a little more black and white, I would say, with the church. And I always looked up to her because she seemed to just be doing it right. And she had this great boyfriend that he went on his mission. They hadn't even kissed yet. They weren't going to kiss until.
So they were just right out of for strength of youth.
Oh, yes.
Just,
they were on the cover. So,
yeah.
And so everything just, she got married in the temple and just everything. She just did it right. And so I just loved that. And I, without realizing it, kind of patterned my life after her. I ended up having a great boyfriend that sent him off on a mission and had the same plans. We did kiss though, so not important.
No.
But and so anyway, right before I went to college, I was with her for a weekend. My other sister was there as well, and she starts talking about feminism and how women should have the priesthood. And I was kind of like, hold up. First of all, why would anybody ask for the priesthood? I'm like, I don't want to get woken up in the middle of the night to give a blessing. I don't want to be a bishop. Why would anybody want that? And then
you had never even considered that as a question.
I remember one time we went to the reorganized church, their temple. I want to say it's in Missouri, and their female members of their church can get the priesthood. And I remember we were rolling laughter in the car afterwards of what? Like, that
because
just
it was
doesn't make
so
sense.
different from your experience,
Yeah,
right?
I just never felt too left out, I guess. And then it was also shocking because, like I said, this sister of mine was very just, she never doubted, you know? And so to hear her express that, it was kind of like, if she's doubting, then what does this all mean for the rest of us? You know?
And so it seemed as if her even raising a question
it
was
like,
akin to not having a testimony
right,
at that point.
I kind of panicked
Yeah.
because it was like, and I think I didn't realize how much I relied on her testimony until she was saying those kinds of things, and then it was like, ooh, like I just got kind of.
So how did you work through that?
So I kind of just shoved it under a rug for about a year. I was like, she's crazy, she's brainwashed, I don't know, whatever. Like.
So you didn't even want to engage with that?
Not even. I just kind of, I remember, I like hate this memory, but so my sisters are talking, and my other sister was never super active, like since being a teenager.
So that it didn't
really
bother her.
Yeah, I was kind of like, we just didn't worry too much because it was just so different than my other sister, and so she's saying like, yeah, I feel like I'm just kind of having a faith crisis, and my other sister's like, yeah, no, I totally know what you mean, and I'm sitting there like,
right,
I'm not, like, and I even said like, well, I'm not. Which, looking back, I kind of want to slap that cute little 18-year-old face.
Right.
But
well, and for an 18-year-old, that's fairly normal.
Yeah, and I kind of felt like I was defending the church a little bit, or defending my faith.
Or that if she was even questioning anything, then you needed to defend it. Which is an interesting response, but fairly normal for 18.
Yeah, and I kind of feel like with my upbringing, I probably should have said this earlier, but my mom was very like, if you brought up a question, she would either like bear her testimony and just kind of try to see.
So, so this was very different from what you had been raised with. So now is a new experience where you're having some questions.
Yeah. So I shoved it under the rug for about a year, and I'm kind of like I said, she's crazy. And then I want to say, so the start of my sophomore year of college, there's a lot more, it's becoming a bigger idea. There's groups being formed of women who want the priesthood, and there's marches happening at the conference center.
And just to give a little context, just talk about when that was.
So that was fall of 2012.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so it's becoming a bigger idea, and so it's kind of starting to like seep into my mind a little bit more again, because I'm like, okay, so it's not just her. It's not just this small group of bloggers that have nothing better to do. Like, it really is a deep desire that a lot of women have. And then and throughout that year, I'm expressing myself, and I majored in marriage and family studies, which with the goal to be a counselor or to go into therapy or something. I have a million different dreams with that. But with that, there's a lot of people in that major that were saying like, oh yeah, I just want to do this to, because when I'm married, it'll be great to have this degree. And I'm like, okay, that's great, but like, come on, like there's got to be more than that. And then I'm hearing, sweet young men at college, just a few saying like, well, if I get married while I'm still in school, it'll be okay if my wife quits going to school so that she can have children and be home.
So a lot of these concerns had to do with men and women.
It's starting to just break away this barrier that I had of where I'm starting to see it's this real cognitive dissonance where I'm like, I think I believe all of this, but then there's these things that just keep coming in that
and
I'm
how could that
bothered by.
possibly fit together?
Right, and I felt a lot of guilt for it, because I had always understood that having faith means that you don't doubt ever. I just thought like, I will be done. I don't need to know the whys. And there's stories of people at their funerals that they say, and they never asked why. Like, mine's gonna be like, she asked why.
She asked a lot of questions. So you're asking these questions, and you're seeing other people ask them, and you're seeing, I think sometimes it's difficult to compare yourself to other people who aren't asking questions.
Yeah.
So what led you eventually to decide to go on a mission? There's a bridge. What happened?
Okay, so by the grace of God, the timing of it, I got put in an English class, English 201 with Sister Debonair.
Well, I actually didn't know the story was going here, so I did not solicit this.
She did not, I promise. But yeah, so I get in this class, and I'm kind of I've just got all these questions, and I'm still not even willing to admit that I have these questions, because questions are bad, is my understanding. And so we get in this class and we start learning really just how to learn. I feel like was a big part for me, of just learning how to annotate and really dig deep into the subjects that you're studying, and really just finding the deeper meaning. And then one day you stood at the front of the class and you said, I sometimes bring this up in my class. I don't always. I wasn't going to in this semester, but the Spirit's telling me that somebody in this class needs this. And I'm going to bring up a whole unit on feminism. And I'm sitting there in the front row like, don't let her see me. But I'm like, that's me. Like, it was an answer to the prayer I didn't want to be praying.
Wow.
I didn't want to admit that I wanted to know more. I just wanted to move on. I even felt like Satan was like tempting me with these questions that I had, rather than this was a normal, healthy, natural process.
And so, the English class aside,
I know.
How did you feel like you used your relationship with God and your testimony to help you through that, knowing that maybe it is okay to ask questions, and if I am asking questions, how can I get to the other side of that?
Yeah.
And I like how you were bringing up skills of how to learn, how to read, how to take notes. Mm-hmm. So how did all of that work for you personally?
Yeah, so I think, and I can't remember, I was talking to my husband about this, because he took your class the next year while I was on my mission, which I promise I'm getting to. But I said that semester I decided to get a copy of the Book of Mormon and annotate it. And when I'm talking to him, he's like, no, that was an assignment given by Sister Debbie. And I'm like, oh, maybe I don't even remember my own story. So I don't know. One way or the other, I got a Book of Mormon. I bought just a new blue copy, and I got a pen. And I remember thinking, I want to know if this church is true, because I've said it my whole life, but now I don't know.
Which is an interesting prospect when you say, I had all of these questions,
well,
yet I was still willing.
Yeah, I don't know. I just
read
remember
the Book of
thinking,
Mormon.
Well, there was one day that I was researching schools to transfer to, because I was like, if I decide that this church isn't true, I'm not sticking around this place any longer. I'll get my associates and then I'm out of here. And so I remember looking that up, and then I just thinking, I wish I wrote better at the time, but I remember thinking, well, what do the missionaries have people do who are learning about the church? Because I was treating myself like a new investigator, kind of. Like,
so you were going to be your own convert.
Yeah.
So rather than just giving it up, go back to the beginning and say, I'm going to find out.
I took everything off the table, and then I just, the missionaries give people the Book of Mormon, and that's where it is for people. And I hadn't read it for myself at that point. I had read it for personal progress. I'd read it for the Book of Mormon classes at BYU Idaho, but I hadn't ever truly read it with the desire to find out if it was true. And so, I got my pen. I'm like writing up everything. It was so fun. And I remember just even, and I think in your class we talked a lot about the women in the scriptures, that I was always mad that there weren't more, rather than diving into the ones that are there. And so I remember hearing, one of the first things that we hear about Soraya is that she is mad. And I'm like, yes.
But you're that's some subtext though too, being willing to see that as part of the story, which is a good, honest, fresh approach, which is what you were trying to take.
Yeah, that's what I really I just wanted, like I said, everything was off except for the Book of Mormon there. And then I remember finally, and then reading about Eve too was just incredible, and learning more about her, that they call her the mother of all living. I just love that so much.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, and then, but what really I think was a game changer for me was Alma 32, and just the simple statement that says, I hope I get it right, but even if you have but a desire to believe, that I had never even thought of that. I thought that was bad, to not believe. And so to hear that it's in the Book of Mormon, it's being taught that even if you have a desire to believe, then that's enough to work with. And so that was I felt so validated in that. I felt so just that this is normal. And so I was like, I don't have to say right now that I believe. And that's what I was struggling with, that I have to either, and because the pattern that I had seen was you believe, then you have doubts, and then you leave the church. Because I didn't hear the stories of people or see that happening very often, where it was, I have my beliefs, I have my doubts, I choose to stay.
And so you hadn't seen that before, but you...
because I know it's happened, but it's just
right.
not a story that's told.
And what's so beautiful is it's your story.
Yeah.
So how did you get to that last stage?
Yeah, so I remember that I think I finally finished the Book of Mormon. No, I decided to go on a mission before I even finished, because
you had a desire.
Yeah.
So you acted on the desire, just like Alma talks about. You planted the seed, and just hoped that it would grow.
Right. Yeah. So it took a few months,
yeah.
But I remember, and I don't know if you'll remember this, but the age change that we call it, when they changed the age for the missionaries, it happened while I was in your class.
Yeah.
And all of these girls just immediately, I'm going on a mission, and I'm sitting there, well, I don't even know if the church is true, so I'm just gonna kind of sit here and I don't know. And I just remember I woke up that next morning after seeing everybody's announcements on Facebook that they were going on a mission, and I'm looking in the mirror like, what's wrong with me? Why don't I feel like 5 years ago this would have been me. I would have been having my papers in as soon as possible. And I just had this very simple feeling that just said, just stay where you are. And that's where so I'm like, okay, I'm going to stay in school. I had all these plans. I just ran with that simple statement. But I think it was after that you brought up all the things in your class that really helped. And so it was through that. I had some other incredible mentors and stuff that really helped. But yeah, I think it was really just realizing that I loved the Book of Mormon, and that I would get to share that with people. And that for me, it was all about Jesus. I didn't care about anything else after that. I just was like, I just want people to read the Book of Mormon and realize how awesome Jesus is.
Yeah. Well, and so I think it's interesting, you had used the metaphor before that you cleared everything off the table, but it sounds like once the table was cleared, you put the Book of Mormon and Jesus Christ on the table, and then said, that's enough for now for me to go forward. Mm-hmm. So let me ask you one last question.
Okay.
In your life now, I like that pattern where you said, I didn't know it was a pattern, but I just discovered that it could be, of having belief and doubt and then more belief.
Yeah.
How do you stay on that believing path now? So you're married, you have a beautiful little girl. What keeps you on that believing, desiring, planting seeds
and
path?
I wish I could say that ever since then, it's just been like smooth sailing in this beautiful path.
I don't want you to say that.
Yeah, no,
say what it really was.
And even recently, I've had some wrestles that I'm dealing with, but I think what really this whole process has taught me is to not panic when those questions come up, because it's okay. It's good to have those questions. And to know that Heavenly Father is He wants that for us in a way. And so I just know that I don't feel the urgency with finding answers like I used to before. I don't panic the way I used to.
And you can let the answers that you do have help you keep going.
Yeah, because really there's nothing else to me that matters that much than Jesus and the covenants I've made. That's really just the biggest part for me. And so if I can't connect it to any of those, then I'm just like, whatever. And I think one thing too is, in the Book of Mormon they talk about how there's the small plates where the most important things are, and then they've got the larger plates with all the other records. And so sometimes I ask myself, is this a small plates issue or is this a large plates issue? If they're writing scripture of what's happening in our day, how long are they going to focus? How many verses would they dedicate to this issue? Yeah,
I really like that.
So that's just
it's really great. You've given us a lot to think about, and thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it.
I could.